And we're recording. Hello,
Awesome.
Suzanne. Thank
Hello.
you.
Thank you. Yes. Well, thank you so much for calling this follow-up. Another, I hope, of many more Zoom meetings to come. And I was sharing with Jen how this all started. To be quite honest, about a week or more ago, I was sitting late at night thinking, how is this going to work? How am I going to do online microbiology? I've never taught completely online. And I started Googling online labs and realized we are all probably doing this, and this is a huge time sink, and this is not going to happen. And I felt completely defeated and realized, why don't I reach out to my colleagues and get us together so we can collaborate and we can share ideas and we can learn what other people have tried or what works. And that's pretty much how it came together. I reached out to Mira at the University of Washington, and she connected all of you together by email and said to me, we're getting a lot of people interested in talking further. So that's how this first Zoom session happened. And I'm thrilled that many have reached out and said that it was great, and it started a conversation that we all needed to hear. I think, first of all, that we have our students' hearts their learning is at the core of our hearts. We want to do this thoughtfully, and we want to be supported, and we need to figure this out on a short timeline. What is the best way to execute online instructions in a course that we don't normally teach online, at least the lab portion? So since last week, I've submitted my grades finally and came around to realize that what was at the core of driving my decision for how to proceed. Many were talking about using online resources like hands-on labs where you can get kits, using things like Labster to supplement instruction. I personally felt that what I really want my students to learn is their critical thinking skills, not learn, but use those critical thinking skills to interpret data, and that I was going to propose creating the experiments, redoing them if I need to, if I don't have images of data, and then providing the students the data. So having them run through the labs, talk about the key goals for the labs, and then giving them the end result to interpret. That seemed to be the best way to address some of the issues of creating a curriculum that led them down the path to still experience those activities and not have them be in lab. It took a lot of weight off my shoulders for having to create an entire new course using modules that I haven't vetted, that I don't have time to really completely explore, that I don't know if all my students will have access to, all of those things. So at North, my colleagues and I are talking about what are the key labs we want to launch and move in that direction. So I wanted to share that with you. I also hope that you will, if you have resources that you want to share, that you can you're welcome to join our Canvas shell. That was a place that I felt we needed to have established to put things, because email was just becoming overwhelming as we all transitioned to work online. And I'm hoping that we can collaborate there with activities. You can share ideas you have, how you want to convert things to an online format. I'm interested in exploring, ways to do Zoom instruction where they have some interactive component and some worksheet or something to reflect on. So those are my thoughts as of now, and I'm so happy to see you guys back, and I hope we can continue these conversations. Thanks, Jen.
Perfect. Hi, this is Jamilyn Penn. Can you all hear me? Okay, great. I had some challenges getting in a little bit earlier, and so finally made it through. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Jamilyn Penn. I'm the Director of Transfer Education here at the State Board. And Jen and I thought it would be a really great idea if I were to help with the facilitation for this conversation that you're having, particularly because some of you had some inquiries about how labs and or coursework would transfer into applied baccalaureate and or four-year programs. And so I'm here to listen and hear what you have to say. Please understand I'm an English major by trade. And so I don't know all the bells and whistles. And so it will be really good for me to hear what your concerns are, and then also to take some notes and or ask some questions. So Suzanne, that was really great. Thank you for initiating the conversations and moving forward
Yes.
in the manner that you have. And I'm really glad to see this group come together. So based on what I heard Suzanne say, I'd like to go one step further with the conversation. And first pause to ask the question, was there anything that Suzanne said that it incited you and made you say, yes, I want to know more about that part? I have some other questions, but let's start there. Okay,
Hi.
go ahead.
I'm so
Hi,
sorry.
introduce yourself, please.
I'm Colleen Sheridan. I'm from Highline College,
Hi.
teaching there. And Suzanne, I just came in late, and just as I clicked on, you said, and that was my thoughts, and I didn't hear what you said. I totally apologize. Did you talk about what our nursing schools are looking for in terms of transfer?
No, I did not. I just gave my perspective of how I started this whole group and where we are at North as far as moving ahead for a plan for teaching micro online labs.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks. I'm sorry, Suzanne.
No, that's okay.
I can speak. I would like to speak just a little bit about the nursing programs and transfer, particularly as it pertains to COVID and all that we're doing here. So my constituents and I at the Council of Presidents is Julie Garver, and Julie has oversight for the four-year institutions, and then also even working with the K through 12 sector. So that's what my work is working with all three of those sectors. But one of the conversations that we've been having with the Council of Presidents in particular, and with the Nursing Commission, and all of the licensure entities that are related with nursing, is where we can build in that flexibility. You know, how can we sector to sector and through the partnerships that we have externally work to assure that we are building in the flexibility that will allow our students to have those credits transfer. I can tell you that those conversations have been ongoing. In fact, I am on a call the latter part of this week on Thursday and again on Friday to see what we can put into place. But they are trying to be in the Nursing Commission, as flexible as possible in having those conversations with us. And we're looking for the written guidance to go along with that.
There we go. Thank you so much, Jamilyn. That's really fantastic. We talked to our nursing program as well. And one of the big things that they really want us to cover in terms of skills is aseptic technique. And let's see, what was the other thing? Lab procedures, safety in the lab, and then also identifying clinical unknowns. Those were the three things, actually. And washing, yes, thanks, Renee. And washing hands,
Washing up the hands, yes. Yeah, thank you. I do see a few other questions coming through, but before we move forward, were there any other, I'll pull these, but were there other questions from what Suzanne had to share?
I just have a comment that we've been teaching online for about 8 years now for our nursing program. Now, we don't recommend that they take the online lab if they are a biology major, because we feel like there's some skills that they also need to learn. But who was it, Colleen? Quite frankly, like as a nurse, they're never going to be doing gram stains, you know, like the technique itself. They need to understand about, in my opinion, the difference between gram positives and gram negatives and how that affects antibiotics and all that. But so the critical thinking piece was the part we thought was really important. And we've got enough data to show that there's really no difference in their ability to be successful in our nursing program, whether they took it online or on campus. So the lecture's the same, all the assignments are pretty much the same. It's just the difference between doing the virtual or at home hands-on type labs compared to doing the one on campus. I think the one on campus is a lot more fun. I mean, really still.
Yeah.
But, we have students that have because of their jobs. They're already LPNs. They're in the LPN, the RN Bridge program, and they cannot come during the hours that we offer our on-campus labs. So, but they've been very successful, and not a lot of difference in the overall grades most quarters between our on-campus and our online students.
So you've been in the
Can I
business.
just jump in really quick and say
Go ahead.
thank you, Katrina, for sharing that. And I feel I came to that own understanding. I came to that on my own with the realization of, or I guess the reflection rather, of thinking about what is it that they're going to be doing and what are the key ideas that I need them to understand. And I think that is what drove me to say, why don't we do this online lab with giving them the data, and I'll still have it like 5 or 6, or I don't know how many yet. I haven't gotten there yet, figuring out how many labs we'll do, but we'll do the key core ones so that they can see what a gram stain looks like, even though they're not going to focus their microscope. That is what I think is the most important pieces that we can transfer this under these conditions this quarter. And I would never, I think, opt for this. I think there's value to be in a lab and to be actually hands-on, but given the circumstances, this is where this, like, the most critical pieces of learning and the direction that I think is going to work for us at North.
There's a question that I would like for you to consider. I'm sorry, I have all kinds of bells and whistles going on over here. And that is for those of you who are not yet, or who have not yet taught the labs in particular, but even the didactic portion in the virtual environment. How are you planning to do that? And what challenges are you involved in right now? So that's the question that I have. And then I'll pull some of the inquiries that are posted here in the chat. But is there anyone who's like, I'm trying to do this, I'm trying to lift this program, and I am challenged with, and we want to know what that with what?
Hi, this is Hillary Kemp from Everett Community College. I wanted to speak to that a little bit. I've actually had a lot of experience teaching the course content, the lecture part online.
Yes.
So I've done a hybrid at South Seattle for many years. And currently I only teach face-to-face, but this quarter I'll be leaning on that for the lecture part considerably. One thing that we sort of came to that might be useful to others is that we have several sections, and I'm planning to do synchronous meetings for the sections that we're going to meet face-to-face, but also have some that are asynchronous. So there's a little bit of a choice that students can choose to be in the more traditional online or somewhat approaching a face-to-face environment. The challenge, I think, for us really is the labs. The course content can be done as canned lectures, or it can be done as Zoom meetings, but the labs are really what I think most people are having the biggest struggle with. And that's certainly true for me, because even though I've taught extensively online, I haven't done it in a lab online before. So I want to thank so much the people who have contributed to that conversation, because it's been really helpful for me to reduce my level of panic.
So what did you hear that helped to reduce the level of panic?
The idea that we have permission to reduce the emphasis on technical skills, going more to the conceptual space, and trying to get people to understand things like, if you have this result, what does it mean about bacteria? And then what are sort of the practical applications that will be useful for nurses? And particularly Colleen's comments that came up in our last meeting last week have really helped me to sort of focus on what sort of few skills I should emphasize, the rest of it being more theoretical.
Okay. Anyone else in that regard? Where have you seen challenges? And I might add to this conversation, where are the challenges, particularly we're talking labs right now, and or the successes that you see and that you plan to use moving forward?
So I would like to add to this conversation the current state of my household, which is to have everybody home and have 2 children that have online learning from about 9 to noon. I'm very thankful that they have specific instruction with their instructors for an hour each. but it does create a space that is hard for me to carve out time when I would normally be in the classroom from say 10 to 12 with a group of students. So so I've had to really reflect on and work with my husband's schedule to create a couple hours a week where I'll be able to Zoom. This is what I've come up with, and be there for the students, because I feel that being in person and interacting and having somebody be present as much through conferencing is really important for their learning. I do have lectures recorded because I used them for a different class this last quarter. So I have Panopto lectures for material, and I won't be able to host 2-hour class sessions for the classes. They will just have to be an hour for each class a couple times a week moving forward. So trying to juggle the real life at home and the challenges of having more people working out of the house and when those hours are going to work. I will host it at the time that they will have class. So it will be synchronous Zoom, but I'll record them. So for those students that also have the same challenges, they can go back and review those and participate in that experience.
Thank you. I want to go through and see if I can pull some of the questions, but hold on. There are quite a few of them that have come through, so just give me a moment. Pull down. One of the questions is, or comments is rumor that Bellevue will not offer micro this spring. And I can tell you that what we have learned at the state board is that there are quite a few colleges that have made the decision, particularly given the circumstances around COVID-19, that they will not offer. And so students in the background are scrambling to find those programs that are open so that they can register, because just like you can imagine, if they don't take it now, that means that they have to take that later, and their aspirations for moving into programs like nursing will be delayed because they know they have to finish those. So I'm going to talk just briefly about why they are not offering. Some of the colleges that have decided not to offer those programs, they've done so because they don't see the capacity either physically or monetarily of moving the programs from that face-to-face, particularly labs, face-to-face to online. When you talk about moving labs in particular from face-to-face to virtual, two things to consider. Number one, social distancing first and foremost, right? So do you have the capacity, the room, the space to run social distancing or have social distancing? And then second of all, if that is the case, more often than not, that means that you have to run more than one lab. And do you have the, let's say if you have 24 students, but you can only have with social distancing 6 in the lab at a time, then that means the implications for hiring new faculty and the monetary means to do so. So many colleges have opted not to offer. And so what you're going to find is that you may very well have if you are offering that online virtual, you'll have other more students who are registering or attempting to get into those courses. So that was one of the questions that was posed here.
Could I jump in there real quick? So I think
Absolutely.
that really helps me a lot with what you just said. I have a lot of administrators right now who are asking me, is this course going to be transferable to wherever else the students are going? And so that's certainly something I'm hoping we can talk about. I think that's what we are talking about in the conversation here, to help me give some information to my administrators as well.
Yeah. Yeah. And that part right there about the transcribing and how do we and how are we making sure that the credits are transferable and that everything is in, those are the conversations that we're having with the commission and sector to sector I used to work in K through 12, you guys, so I often say that, I'm sorry, but from the 2-year sector to the 4-year sector in particular, those are some of the conversations that we're really having right now.
And do you know when we'll find out that information?
Yeah, we have some information that I can send to this group. I'll make sure that I get that to Jen and that I can send out what I have in the here and now. But it's an ever-changing, ongoing day. It's literally day to day, the information that we're getting out. And so I don't have my documents in front of me right now to review and to say, oh, but I will make sure that what I have, I will get over to Jen, okay?
That's fantastic. Thanks so much, Jamilyn.
Absolutely.
Jamilyn, sorry. Highline starts on Monday, so we're all freaking out.
I'll make sure that what I have available that I can share out with her this afternoon. Okay. I'm going to go back and take a look at some of the other questions that have come through. There's a question about, hold on, I got to get back to it. I'm not very good at this whole going back and forth. My big question is, will we run into problems with the ability to transfer with doing virtual labs? And so that was the next question. We just talked a little bit about that. Going forward from there.
One thing to consider too is, since Biology 260 is an ampersand class, and unless they look and see that it was offered this quarter, it's nowhere on your transcript that addresses whether it was hybrid, online, face-to-face.
Thank you.
As long as you feel that you have met the requirements for the course, which we're all going to try to do, obviously, meet the outcomes of the course, then they'd have to specifically request the student to, send them a syllabus or something to prove it was online. I mean, they shouldn't be digging around into that information anyway. Either they accept 260 as a course or they don't. And that's what we've come in, unless it's a particular program like where they needed to learn the lab skills, which you can teach somebody how to use a microscope in one lab. So, I mean, it's going to take some practice, but I mean, it's not a skill they couldn't learn at another point. But so I'm not sure, how much of a problem the transferability will turn out to be.
No, and I agree, but given that it is an ampersand course and the policy and practices that we have in place, or the agreements that we have in place per our transfer, I can't think right now, but the agreements that we have in place, that alone, when we talk about the online versus the face-to-face, really the conversations that I'd like for you to consider and the things I'd like for you to think about is the modality and how our students are going to operate. How are you planning to work with your students in that type of environment? What kind of challenges do you have in the here and now lifting into this work? Because this is the new reality, the virtual environment. And then are you meeting the needs of all of the students that you have? So looking at accessibility, looking at equity, and taking that into consideration and engaging those students on a day-to-day basis. How are you doing that? And if you're concerned about that, this is an area that I'd like to talk about. So where are you challenged with that? As an instructor who may at times have that interaction with students on a face-to-face basis, how are you moving to engage on a daily basis with those students?
I agree. That's a lot bigger question than transferability, I think.
Yeah, I can get you the pieces and parts regarding the transferability. That's really what we're talking about as a functional change, right? I want to really, in this time and split space that you have together, and we have another good, about half an hour or so, let's talk about those adaptive changes. That's more along the lines of how do you reach? How do you make sure that things are accessible so that all students, how are you making sure that your students are reaching out? How do they connect with you and contact with you? What are the challenges, if any, do you foresee in that arena? Let's talk a little bit about that.
And just for everyone, I posted Jamilyn's question in the chat. So if you want to see the specific question, it's at the very bottom of the chat.
Can I start off with just saying, for me, it was figuring out how to have some face-to-face interaction, and Zoom is going to be that piece that facilitates that. And now my biggest concern is how do I need to reach out to all the students, and I want them to be able to practice logging in and getting set up with Zoom before the quarter starts. And my second goal is to have an interface with each student, because I would like them to be comfortable in the classroom setting so that they don't have their videos off. I think it's more powerful to see people. They don't have to, you can't all talk at the same time on Zoom. It doesn't work well. But I would like to meet them and see them and interface with them one-on-one so that I can connect with them individually and and just have that, how are you set up? How is this going? And I haven't figured out how or when I'm going to launch that piece. My other piece is to be available for the students that can't be there for the Zoom or have some opportunity to have office hours and what that looks like. My lifestyle here at home with having kids, it's going to make it challenging just to be available for big blocks of time. So that's a piece I haven't figured out how to manage.
Is there anyone that has some ideas about that? In the vein of, I'm going to throw this out to you. We talked about that flipped model in the didactic. Can you flip a lab and get the students prepared for that, and or preparing them to interact with one another in that virtual environment? So let's talk a little bit about that. Has anyone had anything along those lines that they've tried?
And I tell you what we're doing at Highline College. It's our IT department who's being amazing. They are offering an online class that started this week for any student for free on how to use Canvas and Zoom. And so I also sent out a Google Forms survey to all of my students to see whether or not they had internet, whether or not they had a computer, if they were on mobile or a tablet. And then I recommended that the folks who didn't have a computer fill out a form that Highline is using in order to try to get some resources, a computer or a Wi-Fi hotspot there. So you might want to try talking to your IT department and see if they can set up some sort of a quick free Zoom or online Canvas thing for folks as well.
Yeah, and I'm taking a look at the chat, and many of you are chiming in and saying things very similar. We are recording this conversation, and so what I've learned, and Jen, correct me if I'm wrong, and Joe, that the comments are also copied. Is that correct? Yes. So you're saying some really amazing things that align with some of the things that we're talking about. I'm looking at Wendy, is it Nothke? Who says I already have video ready for them to do their theory portion online, and generally my students know I have a very open door policy so that they frequently stop in my classroom. And so what does that look like in the virtual world? You know, they're dropping into my classroom. That might mean that they are sending a message, they're sending a request to talk with you one-on-one. She goes on to say, to help with this, I will be setting up some Zoom meetings to give them additional face-to-face interaction, as well as having some additional chat time where they can also work individually with myself or my lab tech, particularly on working through to use dichotomous, did I say that right? I don't teach microbiology. Dichotomous key, is that how you say it, y'all? Yay, me! So there's some really good comments that fall within that line here. Those are the kinds of things that, as we're moving into this virtual environment, that I think that we can consider and have conversations about. Anyone else?
Yes, I want to add one more thing. I have a lot of things apparently today. So in Canvas, there is a big blue button, which is a way that students can record themselves, and they can work in groups and they can record. It may be easier than having them interface with Zoom. When we first transitioned to online as a college, I went to a workshop about that as well as Zoom, and I think Zoom works better for teaching and for having more people engaged. So for facilitating instruction, I think Zoom is better, but the students may find it because it's integrated already in Canvas, they can use it. You can put them in groups and maybe work on projects together. Just wanted to let everybody know to look for that.
Yes, and I see Joe, she's chomping at the bit there. Joe, do you have anything to add to that? Your mic is...
I'm actually not chomping at the bit. I'm trying to get Patty. I'm trying to read everything that's in the text. But I worked with Patty Green, and she's on here. And so I thought that she was one of those folks who had a persistent link And so what she's saying is she has a Google Voice number that she gives students for texting her and making herself available at certain times to text with them. And I was having a particular moment of empathy with a faculty member who was talking about, you know, I'm trying to adjust and make everything work for my students, and I got other folks home who are using devices and my time with my kids and all of that. And I'm just taking a deep breath, like, wow, it's enough, you know. I know that for faculty in the past, when we've asked them to put a persistent link there so they could say there were office hours where people could drop in, that seemed to help a bit. But that I wasn't really chomping at the bit. I was just wondering if some folks who were on here, you know, had some tips that I've seen them use before.
There are a couple of comments regarding, and there's another that I want to go back to in a moment, but quite a few of you have something to say about the Big Blue Button. The first question is, have you had success with Big Blue Button? I haven't been crazy about it. And that was from Katrina. Aaron says the issue with Big Blue Button, I believe, is that if your school does not subscribe to it, you're limited to 10 users at a time in your queue. And so that's something to take into consideration. Campus to campus, you would have to ask the question as to whether or not or we might be able to help with that at the state board. There is someone who's saying, hold on, you guys are, ooh, you type fast. Hold on. This comes from Addie, and Addie, if you're there, you can also speak to this independently. But what she says is, I know there will be some students that may have problems using Zoom, even just from a technical standpoint, and that is a very real possibility. She says, right now, for example, from my end, all of the videos are frozen and the audio is cutting out occasionally. I keep getting a notice that my internet is unstable. Important to have the meeting recorded and posted for students to review later. And that is paramount. So let's talk about some strategies that you can put into place for all of those. So first of all, students that are not as adept at using technology as they could be. I know that we are developing some resources here at the state board, but do you have resources available for students in particular? But what do you have on your campuses that help students learn to navigate? And this is for biology and or microbiology, I'm sorry, and or other courses. Are there things that you're using in particular? Would anyone like to take the mic?
What I've done is I've put most of my stuff that required Panopto for them to view it onto YouTube, just so they can access it with any device they have without needing any special software. So anything that I can have available that way, I have. With any of the documents, I've tried to have it be as a Word document or a PDF, so that if nothing else, I can help them import it into a Google file and they can manipulate things on Google that way. And with the online, I've been doing the online micro for a long time. So I found just keeping a few simple tools has worked well, rather than expecting them to learn how to use a whole bunch of different tools because they get very overwhelmed. Simple things they already use, like YouTube, have been really helpful.
That's great, thank you. And I believe that we can, if get some resources to people to help with that strategy. The step-by-steps might be something that we can outline here as well. Joe, I'm going to come back to you one more time so that you can explain that resource that you use that helps us to understand what our bandwidth is for technology. Can you share that with this group, please?
I put it in the chat. I think it showed up there. If you go to fast.com, you can check, you probably know this, a lot of you, but you can check your internet speed. It'll give you a take on you know, how much you have there. So when those, I'm not the tech person on our team. I've learned, you know, from working closely with the IT folks about this. But that is something that I find really useful to be able to see what's happening and to teach students, because a lot of times if you are somebody who has privilege and has a lot of access to things, you might have a super high speed internet connection that you pay for. And if you're trying to sit on your roommate's couch and lean forward to get the space in your room, you may not have. And so maybe having an opportunity to check and see for folks, what is their internet speed? And also, as much as I think these cameras and things are so important, you probably know this tip as well, at certain points, sometimes you have to shut the videos off so that people get a better experience. And we've also found, and you probably know this already as well, that if somebody's in another room streaming a video game or doing their classwork now, and I see a head shaking, Suzanne, you've experienced this, right? Like, I used to be able to do my interactions with folks without any problem, and now that there's somebody else at home also working, or streaming a Netflix video or something, I'll be talking and somebody will say, well, your video's kind of choppy. And I'll be looking for all the things I'm looking for normally. And the only thing I'll be able to do, unless we shut down cameras a little bit, is kick the person out. And that's not going to happen. So those are all things that sometimes talking to your students about those too, so that they're in it with you. And I'm not saying anything that you guys haven't tried. I'm just saying fast.com helps me a lot when I'm dealing with the tech people who are like, what's happening? You're like breaking up. Would you just check your internet speed? So we use that, fast.com. Yep.
There are some really wonderful resources that we are sending out from the State Board regarding students, particularly students who have funding through workforce programs, that will allow them to have greater access to resources. Some of those resources free as well. I just sent out to ATC yesterday some of that information. But what I will do is, again, I will package that information and send it over to Jen to make sure that she has an opportunity to send out to this group. I'm going to pause for a moment here, okay? Because for some of you, you might feel like we've moved too far away from microbiology. We're in this other space. So I want to pause and rest for a moment and ask, is there something that we haven't addressed specifically as it is applicable to microbiology that someone is saying, well, Jamilyn, I haven't heard this, or I'd like to talk about this?
Hi, it's Hillary Kemp from Everett Community College again. I was in a lifeboat strategies meeting this morning with Jennifer, and she's on this call. At least she was. Yeah, there she is. She mentioned, Katrina, that you might have some resources coming onto the Canvas Commons because you have experience teaching labs online, and I was curious to know whether you are still planning to do that or if you're feeling too swamped with other things. So you got talked up a lot by Lucas Myers, so I'm very eager to see those resources when they're available.
Katrina, we're all singing your praises. We're like, Katrina.
At the college. We just like chat back and forth by yelling and hearing the person next door a lot. And we're kind of on the same wavelength with our style of teaching, I think, too. So, and I see in the question box here about using Labster's virtual lab. So in answer to 2 questions, yes, I am working on doing a master microbiology course in Canvas Commons, but I'm waiting for the webinar tomorrow that Boy Young is doing for, she's in the OER chat group about how to successfully put an online course in Canvas Commons, because I still have a lot of stuff I need to clean up in my course before I feel like I want to like put it out there, you know. So I'm working on that, and I plan on getting it in there this week with an additional module for all the different resources that I've collected, so that if you don't want to do the labs like I'm doing the labs, that, you know, there's some other resources for other ideas, and you guys have great ideas too. And I've used hands-on labs. I've used late night lab that has now been bought out by Macmillan and has a different name, but essentially the same thing. And we are currently using Labster. But when I started using Labster, they didn't have 10 weeks worth of good micro labs. So I'm not using something that I don't think is good enough, you know. So I actually supplement, and I have had some hands-on labs for them to do as well. We send out Foldscope for them to use. Now, it's not a great microbiology, I mean, microscope, you know, it only magnifies to, I don't know what, 250 or something like that. But they can see protozoa and stuff like that. And so, and at the end of the quarter, when on my final exam, one of the questions is, what's your favorite lab this quarter? And they'll often say foldscopes. Or we actually send a little packet of media home as well and let them do some at-home cultures. And what I feel like is a safe way to do it, I'll put all that. That'll be included in the course with the directions I give them. And that's another favorite of theirs. So because I see when they do the virtual labs, it makes a lot of sense to me. And I think some of the virtual labs are pretty well done, but I see that it doesn't translate as well. Like they can move through the virtual lab, but they don't really understand that they're seeing a colony on a plate in a virtual environment. But if they've done one on their own, then they understand it. And so, I mean, there's no perfect virtual lab. I think it's good enough for allied health students so that they do get the theory behind it.
I have a question about that whole idea of understanding and how, of course, interacting with the instructor is paramount. But have you used the online virtual environment, whether that be Canvas and/or with Zoom, to have peer-to-peer conversations? How are they able to interact?
They're in groups. My students are in groups, and so they have a lot of interaction within their group. And I combine Canvas course sections too, because I found out I didn't have time to like be in 4 different sections of Canvas answering the same questions. And I have like a question and answer forum that they can post questions, and if another student answers, fine, or if I jump in there and answer, fine. And so I try to make it where I have a presence in the course all the time, because I started out face-to-face teaching, obviously, and I had my doubts about whether you could teach micro online when I first started out, but yeah, and doing the labs and stuff is always the biggest question. I think most of you have probably put a lot of stuff online. If you use Canvas, you're doing enhanced stuff, or you've recorded your lectures and put it online. So I don't think that is big an issue, is probably the lab part, but Labster looks like a virtual game, and they all have stories behind them. And when I first thought it, I thought, this just looks corny. I mean, really, they've got some really good labs, though. I mean, actually, a lot of good theory and stuff there. And I had to kind of pick through what I thought would be good for them to use. But my students, it really engages them. It engages them better than some of the other labs. So in the long run, I think it actually has been good. And our 160 courses also use Labster, and so therefore they're used to that platform. 160 is a prerequisite for our, it's cell bio basically, is a prerequisite to micro at our college. And so they have, if they've been doing online bio 160 with Labster, then now they're doing online micro with Labster. But out of a 10-week course, the last year and this year, I was doing 5 Labster labs, and the other labs I'm filling in with like HHMI, doing bacterial identification, where they have to go to get a sequence and go to BLAST and blast it and find out what it is. I mean, it's, and doing the foldscopes and stuff. So I will try to put all of that into the Canvas course shell. And if we have a future Zoom meeting, then maybe I could take more time to answer more questions like that too.
Katrina, I would love it if you could do a lifeboat strategies session. And so it's just been on my list of my email is like a blizzard right now. And so I've just been really wanting to reach out to you. So I'm just going to follow up with you to set a date and time. And I also wanted to let you know, somebody wrote in the chat that they don't care if it's perfect, they just need it now.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to put that gentle bug in your ear and stop talking.
Yeah. We're going back to work April 2nd. I mean, but we've got a long and extended spring break. I don't know what you guys are doing, but our courses now are not going to start until April 20th. So because we do have quite a few instructors on our campus too who have never taught online before and needed more than 2 weeks to get their act together. So I'm going to be helping them, but I could do it sometime this week. It's like Thursday, Friday this week, probably.
That's awesome.
A few more times. like I said, my course is fairly ready to go. I copy it from one quarter to the next, go in and clean it up, change the dates and all that stuff. I feel like, you know, for me, it's not as big a deal that I'm going to have to teach online next quarter. But what's keeping me busy, and Lucas and everybody, is helping other people on our campus and whoever else needs help too. Because yeah, it took me a lot more than 2 weeks to figure out how to successfully put a micro course online, and I still have room for improvement.
So there are a few other questions and comments, and some of you may be following those along. Thank you very much. Thank you for that. One of them is ASM Microbe Library has lots of photos and different pictures. And that was in response to someone else who said, would you like to share the photos? Katrina, can you post some of your materials to the Canvas shell? And you've indicated that you'd be willing to for Northwest Micro Resources. What is the price on the, it's not lobster, that's okay, it's Labster, L-A-B, although I would go to the lobster lab.
For us, it's less than $50 because we're still working with the OER, our affordable resources type thing too. So for 10 weeks, 10 labs of Labster, it's, you know, 40.
We're losing your audio. Can you say that last part again?
It's less than $50 for 10 weeks, 10 labs.
Okay, excellent. And we can talk. We have some excellent people who work with OER here at the State Board. And so we could also, you know, help to facilitate.
Yeah, I called it OER, but it's really, it's the affordable, the $50 cap on affordable resources. Yeah. And we use the OpenStax microbook. We've used it for a while, so it's free, unless they want a printed copy of it.
Other comments are, there are a lot of resources on the web for showing people how to do their own fermenting at home with food microbes. I was thinking of having students learn aseptic techniques with yeast, which I think is a really great idea. Jen, Colleen, what a great, oh, I'm sorry, some of them. I was thinking, let's see. Again, other questions about the Labster price. There is some, the question, Jamilyn, what about a state license to Labster for all of us?
Yeah.
Mark Jenkins and I have been talking, or I shouldn't say I, have been talking with the rest of the directors here at the State Board around that very idea. That's something that I would have to plug into him with about a bit more. Again, we have the comments here and we'll pull, and I'll work with Jen to make sure that we get resources to you. I do believe that there is information in the works and that there is some licensure, but I don't know all of the finite details about it, okay? But I will look into that. And then there's a comment from Hillary. I'd like to hear from people who've successfully sent out media to use for sampling and how you made it safe enough to convince the liability people. Does anyone have any feedback there? Or is there an alternative for the for the sampling? I mean, what are you doing that virtually as opposed to doing it the way that it was done before with those types of samples? Okay, something to consider. That might be something that we, as you know, we can do a little bit of research in the background to see. Someone else wrote, I'm thinking of food microbes to, oh, it skipped. To put two, but already I'm knowing going to get pushback with that one. So it seems to me that some of the things that you were able to do in that face-to-face environment around the samples, the tools and resources that you're putting into students' hands in order to learn how to understand the concepts that you're trying to teach them, that's where you now are kind of stymied and trying to work collaboratively with one another and or with the State Board to help figure out how we can move forward with that. Those questions, keep them coming and let us see if we can tap into tools and resources that we can discover to help you. I'm looking at the clock. We have about 7 minutes to go. Wonderful conversations going through. Some of you, I can see your eyes moving and your lips moving as you're reading the comments. So you're probably ahead of them further than I am. I'm going to pause one more time and ask the question, given this environment today with all of this beautiful resources in all of you here, what have we not talked about today that you would like to know more about? And if I would ask in this moment that you maybe take the mic as opposed to typing it up so that we can hear.
Hi again, it's Hillary from Everett Community College. Really quick,
Hi.
the last simulation that I have yet to explore that I'm really interested in is the Learn Smart system from McGraw-Hill, and I just wanted to ask if anyone had any experience with those labs or has reached out and gotten any ME simulation work done.
It's okay.
I just spoke with the McGraw-Hill reps about Learn Smart. One negative is that it still uses Flash, but it could be feasible. You also need to get access from them because they're trying to phase that out.
Anyone else? No one else has experience with that particular resource?
They just have, the Learn Smart just has more micro labs than the virtual labs that they currently are using for the, or have available for the spring.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Thank you.
Oh, and Kristen, to follow up, it's Hillary again, sorry. Did you get, are they offering the access for free or is there a cost?
I know that the virtual labs are free. They're giving codes for that. I don't know about the Learn Smart because we're currently using the textbook and the Connect. So that'll just come with it.
Thank you.
Any other questions from you? I have maybe one or two others myself, but anything in particular based on the conversation that we're having today? Okay.
I had just one thing. Is there anything that anybody's settled on as far as how they are going to proceed for teaching online labs that they feel like sharing, or I'm just curious where everyone's at.
Hi, Hillary here from Everett. I haven't settled on everything, but there are a couple of resources that actually got posted to the Northwest Micro Canvas shell, thank you, which I am going to use very heavily. So there was Christy from Columbia Basin had posted a bunch of videos that she made for her flipped micro labs. And I was going to pair that with another resource that I haven't fully explored, but is free, which is a bunch of video simulations that were posted to that page as well. I'm currently making my own unknown ID interactive lab, which I'm going to be doing sort of a combination of traditional and molecular methods. We have a bunch of resources that I'm going to sort of repurpose from previous quarters. Other than that, I think it's going to be a lot of catch as catch can.
So this is Kimberly McClure from LW Tech, and I'm sort of going through all of Labster's micro labs. I've gone through at least 4 of them, and I did like the gram stain lab where they have to interpret a gram stain, which is quite nice. And it was a messy one, kind of like what they would see in lab. So it was a little hard to interpret, and I thought that was great. And I'm going to do that lab as well as the bacterial isolation lab. So far those 2, and maybe the enumeration lab. The enumeration lab was really buggy. It took me a lot of time to get through it, and I got stuck many times, but I'm getting better at Labster. So I'm not a video gamer, but I'm becoming one with Labster.
Oh, yes.
So I've got 3 labs that I think I'm gonna run.
That's awesome. I see there's a comment that came in, and I'm going to articulate it differently, but some of you spoke earlier about how you were preparing your own environment where you work and how shutting doors or only running labs at certain times because family is there. How are you going to work with your students to help them secure environments where they're able to learn? Have you thought about that, particularly as it pertains to microbiology and the labs that you have to run or that they will be asked to participate in? What strategies do you have? Okay, not a lot.
With
Go
the
ahead.
fold scope, they often get their kids to help them because their kids are really interested in it and it's fun, and they make it a family project, and they'll put that, they post a discussion forum. They have to post a picture that they've taken with their cell phone through the fold scope, whether it's a good picture or not. Like, they're not graded on results. It's just that it's more about the process than the results. And they know that from the get-go, because some of them can get some really good pictures and videos and some of them can't. But a lot of them will say, like, I took my daughter with me, I took my son with me. It was fun. So if you do some safe labs, I think, like the yeast labs, the yogurt labs, the kombucha labs, I mean, your kids, the kids are home too. I mean, it's a learning, time for them too. So the kids are probably better at playing the lobster game too.
Oh, that's awesome. That's a great idea. Okay, I'm going to pause here again because we are pretty much at our limit as far as this conversation is concerned. And I'm looking at Jen and I'm thinking that if you need or want to have another session, I anticipate that we can make that happen. Yes, Jen?
Yes,
Great.
please. I love all of you.
Yeah. And that I will say we're going to close here. I want to remind you of a few things. The first one is that we are so fortunate to have the educators like you who are so engaged in helping the populations of students that we serve, our very diverse and very deserving population of students. We're so appreciative of you. And those of us who work at the state board, we wouldn't have it any other way. We want to be here to provide the tools and resources that you need to make that happen. So thank you, thank you, thank you. The second thing is, please continue to be safe and practice social distancing, take care of yourselves and your family, and encourage your students to do the same. This is a very unique time for our country, for our world, and that is essential. Safety first, taking care of selves first and foremost. If there are any resources that you need from us, tools, resources, support, cheerleaders, please let us know. You guys all know Jen Wetham, and she's all of that in a bag of chips, right? She can get you the tools, the resources, and she's definitely that cheerleader. So please don't hesitate. I will follow up with Jen to make sure that we're getting the resources and tools into your hands that I've talked about earlier today from the transfer side. And I want you to know that this has been a very, very good session. Wow, such great information. Thank you so much. Have a beautiful afternoon, and we look forward to our next meeting together.
And Jamilyn, thank you for your beautiful facilitation. That was excellent. Thank you so much.
Be well, my friends.